time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
I welcome you to this session. We are here to give the yearly update on food tech, the state of food tech. And as you may have seen, that the green tech is also about what we eat in the future and the role that plays for the climate and for green transformation of our industry overall. And I'm glad and honored to be here for the third time in a row to moderate this session. Of course, changing participants in the panel. And we want to touch upon the future of food and more precisely the world of alternative proteins. So I can promise we will talk a lot about dairy products, meat products, fish products, and their alternatives for the future. I think the whole festival stands a little bit under the circumstances of uncertainties for the green transformation overall, and we want to, as this stage says, deep dive a little bit into the topic and what that means for the food industry. I'm really glad to welcome here with me on stage Eugenia from Cultimate Foods. You're the CEO of the company and founder. We do have Sarah Borg from the Hochland group from Bavaria, which is also a big honor to have you here on the panel in Berlin. I welcome Fabian Friede from BLUU Seafood, cultivated fish company. And we do have the policy perspective and insights from Ivo Rzegotta, who is the senior public affairs manager at the GFI, which is the Good Food Institute global organization. Maybe to kick this thing off, I want to give the word to you, Eugenia, first to just refer a little bit to what your organization does and what your personal role is in that.
Thank you. So hello together. So I'm Eugenia, one of the founder of Cultimate Foods. I have been working in the alternative protein space since 2018, and I'm really pleased how the growth and how fast developed this sector. But however, I also noticed that the one thing that it's very difficult to convince people to change their diet. And that's why I decided so it's even easier to give them the same product made just in a different way. So that's why I decided to go to cellular agriculture space, and Cultimate Foods is biotech, is a cellular agriculture company, and we are obsessed with fat, with animal fat, and it could be very exciting if it's made in sustainable and of course ethical way, on harming of animals. And so we're developing cultivated fat, or as known as in vitro fat, in our lab, in our facilities for plant-based meat products. And our fat can make meat alternatives more tasty, bring their meaty taste to their meat substitutes, and of course increase impact. So this is, we are based in Berlin and in Hanover.
Great. Want to go on? Yeah.
Well, then I continue a little bit. Hochland is a little bit older than 2018. We're close to 100 years old now, cheese manufacturer, one of the major cheese manufacturers in Europe. How do we contribute to the future of food? Obviously, we produce cheese, and we will do so with milk, also in the foreseeable future. But for this, we also have a lot of programs with the farmers that we're working with. We are not a corporate, but we have very, very deep partnerships with the farmers, and we have animal welfare programs. We have sustainability programs with them. So obviously, in the more traditional sector, we are doing a lot. But then we also have our own startup, which we might not be able to call startup anymore, which is Simply V, our vegan cheese alternative. which is by now 10 years old and market leader in Germany. So that really took off. By the time it was founded, it was not really, there were no good affordable cheese alternatives out there. And Caroline Zimmer, the CEO of the company, did a really good job establishing the brand and making this really like a mass product. One other thing that we have, which I don't think a lot of people know, is that we had a startup competition within our company, and one of our employees developed a new brand, a new subsidiary, which is called Beetgold. By now we sold it because it's not a good fit to our core portfolio, but it was vegetable wraps made out of vegetable pulp from vegetable juice making. So upcycling a waste product into a very, very delicious, I like the wraps, they were really good, a good product. So there's a lot of different initiatives at Hochland doing this. I personally work with startups, more specifically with the startup that we invested in over 3 years ago. They work on precision fermentation derived milk proteins, so milk proteins that are grown or produced in a fermenter, kind of like beer brewing, just instead of alcohol and CO2, they produce milk proteins, and we make cheese out of that, which is a little bit challenging for Europe. Ivo will talk about that later. But yeah, that's one of the pillars that we are working on. And
yeah, so we are talking like we are tapping into more and more into alternative ingredients that replace animal products. And Fabian, you are the next in the row to add another thing to the table, right?
Awesome, thank you. Yes, at BLUU we develop tasty seafood made from cell culture. So that means that we can produce fish fingers or salmon sashimi and everything that makes up these products, like the muscle cells, the connective tissue, the fat cells, and we grow that, like you said, in fermenters that are similar to the ones that we use to brew beer in. And the beauty of that is that we do not have to kill any fish. We do not have to destroy the oceans. Also, we have a 100% controllable process, meaning that we can guarantee that the products are safe to consume, that we don't have any unwanted substances in it, like heavy metals or antibiotics that you commonly find in wild-caught fish or fish from aquaculture. So at BLUU we basically produce the real deal, real seafood with zero trade-offs. And as co-CEO I have the honor to do everything on the commercial side, so I'm not a scientist. We have plenty of them. From 35 people, we basically have 30 scientists. But I do everything else. They do the heavy lifting, I do the easy stuff. Go to market, fundraising, regulatory. So over to you, regulatory.
Thank you. My name is Ivo Rzegotta. I'm with the Good Food Institute. The Good Food Institute is a non-profit think tank in the space. We are an international organization worldwide. Around 200 people are working in our organization. And our mission is to make the food system more sustainable, more just, and more secure. And we believe the best way to do so is to invest in alternative proteins. And in our understanding, alternative proteins are the technical platforms that we learned about in this round. Plant-based foods, fermentation-made foods, and cultivated foods. To do so, we're working together with scientists, with businesses, and also with policymakers. And my role is I'm in charge of our policy work here in Berlin, and in the last months also more and more in the DACH area, because a couple of weird things happening in Austria at the moment in this space.
Ivo, I want to continue with you. Like, could you, like, having this bird's eye perspective in a way, Germany, but also beyond Germany, can you give us a little bit of an insight how that market works? Like, how big is the plant-based section compared to the conventional animal-based products? And we have heard of the novel technologies. What market split do you expect for those technologies in the future?
First of all, I don't do any predictions about how it's in the future, because it's really hard. You really find a very broad range of prognosis in this field. What we can say is, if you have a look at the market share today, plant-based. Plant-based is the only alternative we really found in supermarkets at the moment, so those novel food categories don't have a market share yet. Regarding plant-based, if you go to a Rewe or so here in Berlin, you maybe get a wrong impression of where we are at the moment, because you see a huge shelf of of plant-based meat products. In the meat category, the market share is actually 1.5%. That's it at the moment. In the milk alternative section category, it's a bit better. There we are at around 10%, but still a lot of things to do. So if we really want to achieve this goal of a more sustainable food system, then we really have to have see a much bigger growth in this area, and for this we need to improve the product and make progress in entirely new product categories and technological platforms. There are some estimations. I think BCG says, for example, if a lot happens, then by 2035 we could see a market share of all those categories combined of between 11 and 22%. But to see this, a lot of things would be happening. And just to put this into perspective, because we're at the GreenTech Festival here, if we would see in 2033 a market share of alternative proteins of 11%, which is at the lower section of this would be the CO2 emissions of Japan today. Mm-hmm. If we would see the upper estimation, the upper scenario, the high scenario of 22%, this would be the annual emissions of India today.
Yeah. So we will certainly come to the regulatory perspective in a moment. First of all, I want to talk the startups in this round a little bit more about how does it actually work. So Fabian, your promise is more or less you have the fish fillet, but it's never seen the ocean. So, technically, how is that possible? And it's what I know in the market, in the supermarket, is like plant-based fish fingers, which are not so nice at all. But obviously, we cannot buy your product yet. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So how it actually works, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I will simplify a little bit how it works, how we get to fish fillet that never seen the ocean, as you describe it. And basically what we do is we start exactly there, right? We start with a fish that has seen the ocean. So we take a healthy salmon, we do a biopsy, and we take out some cells. We isolate the different cells because we only want the stem cells. And then we put these stem cells in a nutrient-rich broth, so to say, and then we hope that they grow. And what we see is that different cells, some grow well, some don't, some die. We take the ones that grow well, and we basically train them. Yeah? I use the term train. Nobody else would use that, but I find it's the best way to describe it, because we basically have taken them out of their normal environment within the fish in a completely new environment, and we need to show them, hey, you can also live here, you can grow. And we do that over a long period of time. We then from a very small little container, we put them into a larger vessel, let's say 1 liter, 2 liters, 3 liters, 10 liters. And again, always we select the ones that grow the fastest. And in the end, we have a so-called cell line established that is growing well, that is very dense, and we can use that to then produce food. There's a few steps in between, right? Because now we have the stem cells. Normally, yes, stem cells are also part of the fish fillet we eat, but mainly what we have there are the muscle cells, the connective tissue, and the fat. So what we still need to do is we need to differentiate these cells. Luckily, stem cells can do that. So we can trigger this differentiation so that out of a stem cell becomes a muscle cell or a fat cell. And that's what we then do with different techniques. So in the end, we then have all the cell types that make up a fish fillet. And then again, there are different technologies that you can use to basically get to the perfect structure of a fish fillet as you know it. So grow on a scaffold, you can use some extrusion, 3D printing. So different companies are using different technologies. So in the end, you have the perfect fillet. until we get there and can buy that in the supermarket, and I also don't like to do predictions like you, but I think we can all agree it's not next year. Yeah, because first thing, there's a regulatory part, there's also the technology part, because what I just described is more on a lab scale. We need to bring that into a larger scale, so it actually makes sense also from a financial perspective. And I think that's where a lot of startups, I was included, are currently working on. We have mastered basically the cells on smaller scale, meaning in smaller vessels, like a couple of liters, and now we need to get it to 5,000, 20,000, 100,000 liters. So really kind of the volume that we know from brewing beer, because only then it's commercially viable. And
Yeah.
I could talk for an hour about that, but I think that's as much as we need to cover here.
Thank you. So it's really, I think, a good idea to touch upon the actual horizons that we are reaching by the time. And I wanted to ask you, Eugenia, because your approach is similar but different at the same time, because you're also in cultivating animal ingredient, but you use it like maybe you have a simpler approach. At least this is what I understood.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, happy to tell more. So as I mentioned, we are crazy about fat at in our startup.
Which we don't hear really often in the society. Someone's crazy about that.
So let's look at the firstly into the future. So we one day will have a cultivated meat steak on our plates bought in the supermarket, but it's a very long way. So what will be the next generation of food? What will be the next step? And we have to go to this direction. So the next generation of food, the next product, it will be a combined product. It will be not fully cultivated meat sausage. It will be a product combined with the plant-based protein and cultivated ingredient on cultivated part. So the question is now, what is the best part of the meat? What brings the taste? And it's basically fat. Fat brings the taste, juiciness, flavor, mouthfeel. So it's they're clever to start with this cultivated part with cultivated fat, because cultivated muscle will not bring the taste. So, and we have a lot of good products, structured products. They look like meat, but unfortunately they do not taste like meat. And this small cultivated part brings flavor and taste, and it's exactly what we are doing. We are creating fat, and in the future, or like our customers soon can combine their plant-based products with our cultivated fat. And it's of course easier approach, as Fabian explained. They at BLUU they do different types of cells. So we cultivate only adipocytes, only fat cells. And from the nature, you know, if you're sitting in front of Netflix eating chips, you get in kilos very easier. So it's exactly as adipocyte fat cells, it's easy to cultivate them. For muscles, you need to go to the gym. As for the muscle cells, they need to be also mechanical stimulated, and it's much easier to get them. So we see that our approach is makeable, and we can achieve the market very fast, and we will be this transition to the fully cultivated future.
Okay. So what you say is that basically, like as plant-based is becoming commoditized in a way, also like legacy type of industry at one point, you are helping them to reach new barriers with your ingredient.
It will be at their beginning maybe only 5 or 10% of cultivated part, then it could be increased. So it will be a huge difference and variety of products. And it's also acceptance for the for the consumers is also will be on the way. So we see us as a transition is a key to their cultivated future. And and the approach, as I explained, with the cultivated, with the adipocyte, with fat cells, are much easier.
Sarah, what's the next generation of cheese? So you say that Hochland is already quite successful in plant-based cheese. Maybe some of the audience have already tried the products and seen the products, but I'm sure that you also touching upon new technologies and ingredients. Like what are you seeing?
Well, I think in the near future, the next generation is going to be like a better version of the plant-based cheese alternatives that we have right now, because those technologies are a little bit out, right? But we invested in startups that we are closely working with. So I think the next real innovation and the next really big bang kind of is going to be like a product, probably not from cell culture, because I think that is a little bit further out, but out of those precision fermentation proteins. You can already buy those products made out of this in the US or in Singapore. Obviously, Europe is always lagging behind, so you cannot buy it here. But we want to be ready for the market once that happens. I was lucky enough to taste some of those products, and although, of course, I'm a big fan of Simply V, and it's a very great vegan cheese, it's just no comparison. Like, if you use those animal identical proteins that are derived from fermentation, like, it tastes so close to real dairy, it's insane. So I think this will really make a big impact. And
I tried in San Francisco. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think products like exactly what Eugenia is working on, like including a little bit or like portions of a fat that is derived by cell culture, although it might be a little bit too expensive in the beginning to replace like the whole fat part, will make a very big difference in taste. In Singapore, you can buy in the supermarket now a chicken product that has 3% of cell cultured meat, which sounds ridiculous, but they claim that it is a quite big step into like real taste. Which right now I guess is just the way to make it kind of like work at scale, but it's impressive. It's happening right now.
Yeah. So like it turns out that we are approaching a stage where we have these hybrid products. So hybrid not meaning meat and plant-based, but plant-based and cultivated or fermentation-derived products. Ivo, so now we're coming closer to the elephant in the room, which is the regulatory aspect. This is what you're pursuing every day, I guess. So how does that affect the startups and the industry? Like what's the case in Europe?
Yeah, so every industry has, of course, to deal with regulatory affairs. When talking about novel foods, what we are doing, and a lot of alternative proteins, actually most of them are novel foods. I think we need to set the scene a bit and just say, what are we talking about? When you have food that wasn't consumed in Europe regularly before 1997, then it is considered as novel food in Europe. And that's why before you can place it on the market, it has to run a very, very thorough, a very, very robust assessment of its food safety. So this is, the name for it is novel food regulation. It's on the European level. And it says that a novel food like, for example, cell-cultured fat or precision fermentation-made cheese has to undergo this very thorough process there on the European level. Once it's approved, you can sell it in all 27 member states of the EU, as well as of a couple of other countries like Liechtenstein, Iceland, etc. So, but this takes time in Europe to do so. So it's really the gold standard. It's the world best food standard to do so. And we as Good Food Institute are very happy that we have this regulation, because there are parts of the world who don't have a clear regulatory framework to bring these products to market. But in the best case, it needs 18 months to bring those products through this process, while in Singapore, it's around 9 months, I think, in the best case. In the US, it's around 1 year. So If it was 18 months, then I guess companies like Blue Seafood would say, yeah, okay, what are 18 months? That's not the problem. The problem is, in reality, it lasts much, much longer. Even if you think about things like chia seeds in the past or stevia, it took around 5 years to bring those things through the regulation. And now we are talking about products like cultivated meat, who are in a very, very politicized environment at the moment. The discussions we have in Italy, we have in Austria at the moment, we cannot expect that those foods will be approved within a time of, don't know, 24 months or so. And for startups, which run on venture capital, this is a problem, a real problem. And that's why what we see at the moment is that the leading companies in Europe, almost all of them who are very close to market, are saying, hey, well, let's start in Singapore. We have no other choice. We want to stick to the German market or the European market, but we have no other choice to go to Singapore first, maybe US second, and then let's see how the UK proceeds. And that's a real problem for Germany as a business location for alternative proteins, and not only Germany, this applies to whole Europe.
Yeah, maybe some of the audience was also part of Christian Lindner's speech before. So we do have the startups as the big source of inspiration for the economy in Germany. But the truth is that we do have some regulation on the EU level, which is a good thing, of course, because we do have a safe framework for foods overall, but also really slowing down the progress that we're seeing in the startups as such. So question to the startups, but also to you, Sarah, like, how are you dealing with that issue? Because you do the business every day, you have investors on board, they want to have the return somehow. What are your plans? Can you disclose? Maybe, are you already opening the office in Singapore?
We haven't. We are quite regularly in Singapore, though. But yeah, I mean, exactly what you said, right? Especially for startups, you have a certain lifespan that your investors give you, and within this certain lifespan, you need to achieve certain things to get another round of funding. Especially if, like BLUU, you're really doing hardcore R&D that just takes some time. And there are at least not enough revenues on the horizon to become cash flow positive. So it really is that the case that the regulatory timelines here can kill startups. And therefore, what we do is exactly what you described. We looked at, hey, what are the different countries that we can go to get our first approval, because that would basically de-risk it for many investors. Because they say, okay, Singapore, US, Europe, of course, they all have different frameworks, but they all have consumer safety in mind, right? So they're very much comparable in that sense. So if you can show us that you can do it in Singapore, we believe you can also do it in the US and in the EU. And we're then happy to give you the money for basically the waiting time. And so yeah, for us it's Singapore. We're currently in the process in Singapore that will de-risk the other markets, and investors will then happily give us money, I hope. Let's see. Yeah, I think, I mean, of course, it would be great if it would go all a little bit faster. But on the other side, I can understand, right? These people have nothing to win when you're speaking with the people working in these authorities. I mean, they have all to lose if they allow a product to the market that they shouldn't have, and nothing to win. So I think, therefore, Singapore is a great market. They, at least compared to the discussions I had in the EU, I've seen, because they're way faster. They understand the needs also for smaller companies, and they have a great support system there. So yeah, that's the approach we're working with.
Sarah, like very traditional, you said more than 200 years, German dairy business, quite large though. You are also encountering these experiments, let's say, like, where does it take place geographically? Like, Could you do this in Germany at all?
Close to 100 years, but still, if something is moving slower than a corporate, then it's a problem. So if regulation should not be moving slower than a corporate. Well, our main business is obviously, and our headquarters is in Germany. Like our main business is in Central and Eastern Europe. So this is our home turf. So we want to bring something out here, and the development we are doing is obviously here. But we are bound by this. We cannot give it to consumers. We cannot.
You also have to de-risk the whole process, like a startup does, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we also have a subsidiary in the US, so we have a little bit of a loophole where we can maybe be a little bit faster. But it is. We're a little bit more comfortable because we have the time and the money for us. It's an investment in the future, right? We want a sustainable future, so we can just wait until those products get out into the market. They don't have this luxury, right? As Fabian just said, like if you have an amount of funding which lasts you 2 years and you have to wait 5 until you're able to sell anything, that just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. For us, it's really an investment that we're like. That we are counting on not having a return on invest in like a year or so.
Yeah.
And I could add, of course, there are most of their food tech and novel food startups are going to Singapore. So we're watching the development very with big attention, and it develops every day and changes a lot. So definitely we will be not in Germany first and not in EU, but there are 2 nice vendors in Europe, and it's a UK, so Brexit makes it possible, and as well Switzerland. So we see as well possibility in Europe to enter the market, but at the moment, of course, we are focusing on Singapore.
So we're learning about one of the scar benefits of Brexit in that sense.
Yeah, so I try to see all things, to find in bad things good things. So maybe we can try cultivated meat.
Maybe this is one.
Yeah.
Ivo, how, like, before we touch upon the consumer a little bit, like, how can the policies change? Will the policies change?
So first of all, I answer this question, but let me touch up on this UK point. So what makes the UK possibly much more attractive than the EU? This is, I think, important to understand if you really want to know where are we standing and what's the main problem with regulation. At the moment, the safety assessment in the UK is exactly the same like in the EU. They took it with them. They are at the moment thinking about how they can do things different. But at the moment, it's the same. One thing is different. If the UK says it's a safe product, then they will approve it. In the EU, you have a second step then. And the second step adds further uncertainty for the startups. So if the authority, which is the EFSA, the European Safety Authority, says it's a safe product, it's safe to eat cultivated seafood or so, then it comes into a committee where the 27 member states sit. And in the end, they have to vote. They have to vote, do we want to approve it for the whole EU or not? And you need a qualified majority of 55% of the countries in which 65%, a two-thirds majority of the people in the EU live. And if you have a look at the moment at the debate around cultivated meat in Europe, in Austria, in France, in Hungary, in Italy, of course, then a lot of startups and investors don't know, will this actually work? Will we see a two-thirds majority that says, hey, if those products are considered safe, then they will be approved. And this adds certain uncertainty. To your question, what can we change? We can change two things, because we talked about two problems. The first is speed. There are a lot of things you can do without, with the exact same gold standard of safety. You can employ a lot of people at the authority so that it's enough people. you can really improve the guidance people get from government at the moment. While in Singapore, the authorities really tell you what to do. I need this and this and this for the safety dossier. You don't find this in Europe. The Irish government does a bit, but the German government doesn't do this at all. And that's a real problem. And this is one reason why it really lasts a long time, because so you then hand in your safety dossier, and only then you get the feedback, okay, but I need this and this and this. And then you have other mechanisms that make it a longer process. So just to give you an example, to show you the bureaucracy. If you hand in a safety dossier and the EFSA has 45 additional questions, they give you back your 45 additional questions. If you could answer 44 of them immediately, and they could proceed working with this. They say, no, we need all 45 answers. And if you, for this 45, for the last one, if you need something for this, if you need an expert to assess something, yeah, then it takes time. And you lose 10 months or so. And you have a lot of things you really can change there. And the second one is about those political process in this so-called PEF committee. We really must get our countries here in Europe, and I think Germany is not that problematic, others are, to an evidence-based approach. And you must say, we must tell our governments here, if a food is considered safe, then of course it needs to be approved, and it's up to the consumers to decide whether they want to eat this or not.
Yeah, thank you. So we left out one very important piece of the whole thing, which is the consumer. So we talked a lot about the regulatory and the technologies, how they can scale up. And we've been talking also yesterday in the food session, talked a lot about how can we actually unlock the flexitarian market, which is quite a saying in the industry, because the promise or the hypothesis that we have is that with the new technologies we have the products which come closer to the original, and that will help people reduce animal product consumption. But very practical question, like coming back to the fish finger who's never seen the ocean. How do you label that on the pack? Like, will consumers accept it? Do you have any insight on that already?
No. As Ivo said, there's not a lot of guidance that you get. No, but I think in general, I think one thing is clear: it will be labeled somehow. In what exact way, there is, at least for us at the moment, still a lot of question marks. So yeah, I think therefore, since you have to put it on the label, I think it's something that you have to use in your communication. I mean, we still have a bit to figure out our exact strategies here, because we still need some time to launch. But I think in the end there are two strategies that you see in general when you also look into this space. I mean, I think it was a big bakery chain in the Netherlands or so. They substituted animal-based fats with plant-based fats, and when they communicated it, sales dropped. If they didn't communicate it, sales stayed the same. So apparently some people are afraid of being vegetarian or vegan. So I mean, that's what I call the strategy, to not talk about it, like do good and not talk about it. A bit counterintuitive for a lot of people. And since we have to put it on the label, we do good and talk about it. And I think how you normally would start is kind of what you also see with the cultivated products that are on the market in Singapore and the US is ones mainly for cost reasons. You start in gastronomy, like in high-end restaurants, where you have also kind of the ability to tell a great story around a dish and the product that you use for that. I think that's what a lot of companies use here. And then when you go to, for example, I mean, the end game, I think what everyone wants to do is go to retail, because that's where the volume, big volume is, and that's what everyone has in mind. And I think what you have to do is you have to understand, what do the consumers want? What are they afraid of if they hear the term cultivated or vegan, or So I think also GFI has done some surveys around this. And I mean, the first thing, if you want to go, and that's what we're talking about, right? We want to go to the mainstream, unlock the flexitarians. I think that's what he said. You need to understand, of course, taste is what you have to nail, right? So that's the most important thing. If it doesn't taste good, you will not sell it. And then, especially around cultivated, there are people are in general curious about that. Different countries have different level of curiosity around that. Some are more open to it, some a little bit less open, but all have the question, okay, what does it mean for things like shelf life? Like, is it really fresh? And you would say, yes, it's even fresher than fish from the ocean, because you have less bacteria and so on this product, because it's a way cleaner process. Can you use it in the same way? Can you fry it? Can you cook it? Can you, all these different things? And for that, you have to say, okay, yes, our product can be used in that way or cannot be used in that way. So I think, in general, there's a lot of education that you need to do. But then I think education needs to also, of course, touches people's emotion, because that's how branding works, right? So I think if you just do it like, hey, this is rationally the right thing to do, I think, yes, you will get the people, at least a small percentage, but you will not go as mainstream as you want to go, right? I mean, I think that's what we see. Everyone knows, hey, if I would substitute a little bit more meat in my diet for a little bit more plant-based, it's good for myself, it's good for the environment. Why don't, so many people don't do it, right? So it has nothing to do with that they don't know about these things. It's about the emotional part of that. And I think that's what all the companies have to figure out. Just to let you know, one interesting discussion that we had on that is, why do we actually try to position these products as alternatives to existing products? Why don't we create a completely new category around that? And the example that I heard around that is, if you look at sushi, sashimi, every little cut from the tuna has a different name. It's not called tuna, right? It has a fancy sounding name. Basically, the whole tuna is a complete product category, and you cannot really compare it with any other types of fish, because they don't have that. So why don't we do something like that? Why don't we create a completely new category to get out of that one-to-one comparison? Especially in the beginning, because now we're getting started. We're speaking about these hybrid products where 3% cultivated cells in it. And so I think that is a very interesting thought. As a startup, very, very hard to do that, because, need money, right timing, maybe a little bit of luck as a startup to integrate a completely new category. But maybe something where the industry needs to get together and discuss about these ideas.
Yeah.
Maybe a very short add that the transparency, of course, very important. Unfortunately, meat industry or general food industry is not that transparent as we wish as consumer. And it's important as well to work with universities and educate consumer. We have a little bit easier approach. We are B2B. So we do not need to fight with supermarket to enter. There will be food producer fight for us. But for the end consumer, I just want to say it will be, if we do not need to sacrifice any living beings for our nutrition, it's a next evolution, next human evolution, and it will inspire a lot of people just not to kill for our nutrition. And I think it will happen one day, and it will inspire a lot of consumers to try products and maybe then to switch completely to cultivated.
Yeah. Sarah, maybe to sort of close the round also, you are catering already to the dairy lovers since ages, and also the plant-based cheese lovers, and you're encountering these experiments with the novel ingredients and proteins. Do you have further insight on how consumers would react to then changing for the first time, with the animal real substitute?
Well, there's not too deep insights, but a lot of the startups are like also doing their own research about it. Like if you guys are interested, you should probably watch the TED Talk of Arina Gary from Change Foods from San Francisco. It's really good. She's talking about how to get this to consumers because in the beginning when we started, everyone's like, this is GMO and no one's going to eat it. And in Germany, people are like super crazy about things like this. But first of all, it's not a GMO because we only use the protein and it's separated. And then like people don't care that much anymore. It's they want a tasty food, like taste is king, as you mentioned, and then it needs to be at a price that they can afford. So we like going to market with a premium product to like have a niche and get a market entry might be a good way for a startup. For us, it's the mass market. So we need to have something that the everyday consumer can afford, and which actually reminds them of the food they eat, because food is also habit. It's habit and emotion. So. Yeah, there's a few examples in the US where it's not front of pack to communicate what it is exactly, because people don't want to eat tech, they want to eat food. So yeah, I'm curious how it's going to perform there.
Yeah, so seems we're on the journey. Really good to get the insights from you on how precisely that takes place and what the first steps are. I think you, Fabian, you said it in the preparation of the session, that the first lab-grown burger tasting is already 10 years ago or so. So it seems that we are still, after 10 years, pretty much at the surface of things, and a lot of exciting steps are yet to come. Thank you for... if you want to comment on that.
Yes,
maybe we have 2 more minutes for asking the audience.
All right, I'll make it short. But yes, I mean, it's 10 years ago, the first cultivated burger, which seems like an eternity, right? So it's so long, but I think in general is people kind of overestimate what can happen in the short run and underestimate what can happen in the long run. And yes, we asked in the beginning, but I mean, if we look ahead, like in 50 years, I mean, nobody could have estimated how kind of the smartphone, the internet, and these things changed the world, right? So, and if you look back 20, 30, 50 years, it's crazy. It's so different, and I think 2050, we will look back and it's like, of course, you know, it's normal to have cultivated foods, right? I mean, I forgot who said it, but you know, if you could eat meat without killing an animal, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, I think these are things that in 30 years from now, 25 years from now, that will be just normal. So yeah. At least I hope.
Yeah, that's really nice closing word. Love the spirit. Thank you. We do have 3.5 minutes. If there is a question from the audience, your last chance to shoot. And of course, you can also approach us afterwards. You have one. Please just shout.
Hi. I had actually 2 questions, but I'll come to you later. Maybe that's a longer one. Policy and all of it. Maybe one question for you all. Talking about lab-based meat, I was curious, when you change the host environment of the protein itself, do you see nutritionally, would it mimic exactly the meat? I mean, is that something that's a challenge for you when you try to market the product? Because a lot of people are also questioning, hey, what about the nutritional fulfillment of the product itself? And is that something you see as challenging, or do you think, nah, it's actually the same protein that we're harvesting, so you don't even need to worry about that?
You want to go first?
Maybe I can talk only about fat. So we are replicating exactly the lipid profile of a native fat, of pork fat, and we see the results. We see that there is no cholesterol, for example. We see that it's much better profile, and we believe that nutritional profile could be also be corrected in the lab. As Fabian said, we can control the environment to 100%. So nutritional profile will be exactly the same or even better.
Yes, I mean, we basically take cells from the fish, right? And then we can manipulate, so to say, by feeding them. It's the same with your body, right? You can manipulate your body by feeding it better food, high or low quality food, and it's the same thing with these cells. If we give them the right thing, what they want to have, we will see the same nutritional value that you would get from fish. But also fish in the wild is not exactly the same, right? If the temperature is different, it has different on how much fat is being stored. If they have different sources of nutrition, you see that in the color of the fish and the taste. So therefore, the same cell has the same potential to taste the same, independent of which process used to cultivate it. But of course, you can influence that. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, for the second question, you can meet afterwards. I close this round now. This was the yearly food tech update at GreenTech Festival. Thanks for joining. I think that's the last session on this stage. It was a great pleasure. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
It's time to wake up.